welcome to our Positive Dialogue Framework webinar today. I'm super excited to be sharing with you a more modern way of resolving grievance, bullying and harassment, where those policies are out of date and they're harmful towards colleagues and also the organisation. So who are we at ICL, Inspiring Cultures Limited? So we work in that cultural transformation arena. We really want to help organisations move forward and innovate. We work on our 5 pillars. So the first 2 look at conflict resolution and restorative justice, supporting organisations either training colleagues or actually going in and working with colleagues to restore that relationship. The middle part is where we look at leadership, and we have a variety of ILM programs, CPD courses to really develop leaders of the future. The 4th pillar, we look at coaching. So we help colleagues through our ILM programs to be good coaches, CPD programs, or we go in and just coach organisations. And the last one, which we're working on today, is about modernising HR policies for the future. So the first question, why change your current policies? Really, why change them? They've been there since the 90s. And what's happened is organisations have built on the back of them to protect those policies rather than actually creating an environment where the colleague wins and the organisation wins. If we look at some data, so reports that were sent back in 2022, conflict costs £28.5 billion in the UK per year. That's a lot of money that's been spent on conflict, which could go back in to support colleagues' learning and development. 9.7 million colleagues experience conflict every year. That's a horrendous amount of people, and their families are affected by this as well. They don't just hold it in at work. And the last part there, 2.4 million untrained managers a year. Those colleagues that have been good at their job, they've got promoted, but they're not trained to look after people or the nuances that go with that leadership role. So what we try to create through our policies and the work that we do is in a win-win environment. We love the Stephen Covey 7 Habits book of highly effective people. Really talks common sense and really tries to empower colleagues rather than treat them as a child. So the Positive Dialogue Framework meets the ACAS criteria, which is wonderful, and then also is compliant with UK law. We look at prevention, so how can we prevent conflict in the workplace? We look at cure, a different methodology about early dialogue, and then we look also shifting accountability back to where it should be. HR colleagues did not come into this world to actually firefight. They come in to look at strategy, coaching, development, not to be judge and jury or have work subcontracted from leaders to them. That wasn't the point of HR. So what's the benefits of changing? You can see on the screen there an array of benefits. I'll just pick out a couple. Greater engagement, better productivity, better well-being for the colleagues, colleague development, so HR colleagues actually doing the good stuff. And also when it's more complex, they're involved with it. Better retention. And also if we think about Gen Z colleagues, they're one of the key criteria is a culture of an organisation they look at now. That's super, super important about attracting talent to your organisation. Our philosophy with the new framework, we want to address the issue first and then apply the framework afterwards. Whereas policies we see at the moment, the grievance, bullying and harassment, people apply a policy first rather than the issue. People go off, get investigated. It can take 3 to 6 months. And then at the end of it, people necessarily do not get what they want. And I think the statistics about 9 out of 10 people have gone through their heartache, those families, those colleagues, etc., and actually got them nowhere in the end. Now we get a lot of organisations say, Steve, I really like what you want to do, but we're unsure of our organisation. We've got win over our CFO, CEO, COO. What could we do? So we'd recommend for those organisations, rather than diving in, why don't you allow us to do our 360-degree needs analysis? Basically, that's us lifting the car bonnet, have a look at your engine, really working with stakeholders, carrying out some what's called qualitative surveys with colleagues to find out what's going on, also looking at what's working well, having a good look at your policies, could be engagement scores, etc. And then we design and bespoke the framework to you. You cannot take anyone else's positive dialogue framework and put it into your own. That just can't work. So the positive dialogue framework, we said win-win approach. The process is we look at leadership first. There is a scoring process to bring fairness and consistency in. And then the scoring allows recommendations to be made, which could be early dialogue more complex, or formal dialogue. So let's have a look at leadership first. Going back to that 2.4 million colleagues a year, we want to train the leaders. We want to equip them to have those really soft conversations and lean in and feel confident talking to their colleagues. We want to shift that accountability, that the leader is there to fix the relationship first, not subcontract it to HR. The last part here is that leaders really understand the processes behind the new framework, that they can articulate, can discuss it, rather than burying their head in the sand and passing it away. We want leaders to really stand up and be proud to be in that leadership role. If it can't be resolved by leaders, then we have the scoring system, and that's built on 8 questions which the colleague would write down. They could be right or typed. The idea there is it's positive psychology. It comes out of their mind. It's written. People find it very cathartic and very therapeutic. We score those 8 points out of 15 points. People like it as consistency. We have so much good feedback from our unions and also HR saying it's so much more consistent. There's a clear rationale why we've made the scoring, but we have the ability to step outside the scoring if we think it's appropriate. It gives a fairer outcome to all round. The high level, how we score it, is we look at the time period first. How long has it been going on for? The impact on the colleague, the needs of the colleague, not wants. That's just a change in terminology, but it becomes a more functional present rather than a hope and a desire. What parts of the positive dialogue framework have been used before, and the impact on the organisation. The recommendations fall into 3 parts. Early dialogue, which is less complex, less formal, is to really encourage that early nip in the bud resolution. We usually see around about 40% of cases go through this area, whereas before 100% would have gone through the formal route. And that would have taken 3 to 6 months, 9 times out of 10, not what again is required for the colleague or the organisation. Early dialogue, more complex, we see about 21% go through this range, which is more deeper rooted issues. And then we've got formal dialogue, which about 39% still go through this route. And that is decreasing, but we just see then HR colleagues are being utilising the ER colleagues in the right way. So from a flow chart point of view, this is how it looks. On the left-hand side, leadership and accountability is the first line of defence. If it can't be resolved, the form is completed and sent in to be scored by our HR colleagues. An appropriate recommendation is then made, early dialogue more complex, and formal dialogue. We would train your colleagues to be good investigators, good hearing chair people. We'd also train your colleagues on how to be a facilitator or a mediator, that your company can be self-sufficient. It's super, super important from our point of view. So from our point of view, we know this is a great way of moving to a more modern organisation that cares about your colleagues and the organisation. Please reach out to us on our phone number 0208 058 5582 or at inquiries@inspiringcultureslimited.com. We've got people there waiting. Give us a call. Let's see what we can talk through and actually help you to move forward. Just want to say thank you from me, Stephen Adams, today, Director of Inspiring Cultures Limited, and I look forward to working with you and your organisations in the future. Thank you so much for listening today.